Okay, good morning everybody, and Hazak Ubaru. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Monday morning as we are studying together a new parasha, new book. We are moving into the book of Shemot, and yesterday we discussed the different names that the book of Shemot is given. Some call it Shemot, some call it the book of Exodus, Geula, some call it Sefer Sheni, book number 2, okay, which may sound very insignificant. What does that mean, book number 2? So yesterday we discussed all of these different names. Today let's jump right into the parasha where we have the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, and we are introduced to Moshe, and from now all the way till his death, which is the last parasha, Moshe's name is mentioned in every single parasha except for one. I'm not going to tell you which one. I'll let you think about it and figure it out. But in the meantime, my friends, let us read a little bit from the beginning before Moshe's birth, okay? What leads up to his birth. The Pasuk tells us that the Jewish people were paru vayishretzu. What does that mean, paru vayishretzu? They were multiplying and they were increasing very greatly. Here we are, chapter 1, Pasuk 7. Vayakom melech hadash al Mitzrayim, and there arose a new king over Egypt, Asher lo yada et Yosef, who did not know Yosef. And exactly what does that mean? He didn't know Yosef. How could you not know Yosef? Yosef saved your country. Yosef was famous. And of course, different opinions. But either way, he didn't know Yosef. So he decides to be an act towards the Jewish people with disgust. He says to his people, look, the Jews are more than us. I'm going to say Jews even though maybe they're not called Jews yet. They're called Bnei Israel. Okay, and Paro is nervous now. He's nervous that the Jews are going to overpower him. So what does he say to his people? Havan et hakemalo, let us deal shrewdly with them and let us defeat them and conquer the Jews. So they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. So here is the beginning of the servitude where Paro enslaves the Jewish people. Okay, this is the first case of recorded slavery on a national level. Okay, Paro enslaves all of the Jewish people, and did it work? Usually when you oppress people, they start decreasing in number, but of course with the Jews it did not work. The more the more he oppressed us, the more we multiplied. And Paro realizes we got to do something. So here's what's going on, okay? Pasuk 15, and this is going to be today's class. Everybody pay attention, okay? Chapter 1, Pasuk 15. Vayomer melech Mitzrayim lamiyaletot. So the king of Egypt tells the Hebrew midwives, okay? That was back then's OBGYN. He tells the OBGYNs, Asher Shem Ha'ahat Shifra, Veshem Hashenit Pu'ah. One of them, by the way, her name was Shifra. One of them, her name was Pu'ah. He tells them, when you're delivering the Hebrew women, when you're helping them deliver, take a look at the gender. Take a look at the birth stool. Im benhu, if it's a male, kill him. Hamiten Imbati vahaya. If it's a girl, let her live. Okay. And what did they do? Did they listen to Paro? No, they did not. Next pasuk. Vatirena hamiladot et Elohim. They feared God. Velo asuka asher diber alehem mitzrayim. They did not obey the king of Egypt. Vatehayena et haladim. They let the boys live. And when the king of Egypt heard that Jewish males are being born, he called the midwives, said, what's going on? Why are you letting the boys live? I thought I told you. And they said, listen, the Jewish women are not like the Egyptian women. They are vigorous. Before we even get there to assist them in the delivery, they've already given birth. And once the baby's out, we can't really kill them in plain sight. Our only chance is before the baby comes out and kill them while we're pulling them out, and then to apologize and say, oh, it was a stillborn. But once the baby is born, there's nothing that we could do. And then they had another decree to throw all the males into the river. Okay, so there were many decrees. They tried different ways of trying to destroy the Jewish people. First, he enslaved us. That didn't work. It backfired. the more he enslaved us, the more we multiplied. Matter of fact, we know that the Jewish people, when we leave Mizrahi, were counted. And anyone know which tribe had the fewest amount of people? Which tribe was the fewest? Very good, Sarah. The tribe of Levi. And the answer is because Levi is the only tribe that wasn't oppressed. Levi was left alone because even Paro realized and understood that they need their own tribe of rabbis, of teachers, of educators that are going to teach them. So they were given an exemption. Okay, all the people of Levi. By the way, you ever wonder, how does Moshe and Aaron, they come roaming into Paro's palace, they walk out, they have free, they roam around. What's going on over here? If I'm Paro, I whip them and I say, hey, get back to work. The answer is they didn't have to get back to work. They were from Levi. Okay? And that is actually something that Yosef maybe instituted all the way back when he was in charge, giving an exemption to educators, okay? But we're not going to go into that right now. Coming back to our Pasuk. So you see that the more they were inflicted, the more they multiplied. Because Levi was never oppressed, Levi didn't multiply as much as the other tribes. So the tribe of Levi remained fewest in number. Okay, now what is the reward of these women, Shifra and Puah? Because this is very courageous. They are defying the king, they're going out and they are risking their lives to ensure the survival of the Jewish males. And the Pasuk says the reward is Vayetev Elohim lamyaledot. Okay? God rewarded them. Where's the Pasuk? Vayetev, look what Rashi says. Hetiv lahen. Okay, God rewarded them and He made for them, what was their reward? They were given, right? Batim, the Pasuk says. Okay, they had Batei Kehuna, Batei Leviyah, and Batei Malchut. Okay, they were rewarded with the house of, they were rewarded with Kohanim, with Leviim, and with Malchut. Okay, the question is, a few questions right now, okay? Number one. Just find the Pasuk, 1 second. Pasuk 21. Vahi ki yar'u hamyaledot et Elohim. Because the midwives feared God, vayas lahem batim. He established households for them. Take a look at Rashi. Batei kehuna ulviya ulmalchut. They were rewarded, these ladies were rewarded with they were given Kohanim, Leviim, and kingship. Okay. Now before we see who these ladies were, okay, which I think we all know already who they were, but the Pasuk doesn't necessarily say who they were. The Pasuk calls them Shifra and Puah. So before we see who they were, asks Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, why were they rewarded with these specific rewards of Kohen, Levi, and kingship? Where is the measure for measure? We know that God always rewards midah keneged midah. Where do we find over here midah keneged midah? What's the measure for measure? They let the Jewish males survive, and therefore they were rewarded. I mean, if you ask me, if I were to ask you, what would be a appropriate midah keneged midah reward for such a thing? If you are God and you have to decide how to reward these two women, I would say you're going to live long, you let others live, I'm going to let you live, your children will be protected from any death, right? That's what I would think. No, we give you Kohen, Levi, and kings. Okay, nice, sure. And why not also throw in a toaster, while you're at it? What does one have to do with the other? Answers Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, beautiful. Paro only wanted to kill the men, the males. He didn't care if the women lived. Now we know Judaism is decided by the father or the mother. The religion is decided by the mother. And therefore, Paro didn't really want to eradicate Judaism. He didn't mind if the women were kept alive. If the women stay alive, they're still going to be Jews. But what is decided by the father? If he's a Kohen or a Levi, that's decided by the father. Let's say there's a mother Kohen, but the father is Israel. What's the baby? The baby is a Israel, going after the father. Also, to be a king, both mother and father have to be Jewish. So the three areas that are dictated and decided by the father are Kohen, Levi, and kings. And therefore, because these women ensure the survival of the males, of the fathers, they were rewarded with Kohen, Levi, and kingship. Beautiful. So that's the midah keneged midah. That's the measure for measure. Okay, well, who were these two ladies? Rashi says, let's go back to the Pasuk. Shema Ahat Shifra. One's name was Shifra. One's name was Pu'ah. Okay, there are some ladies today that are called Shifra. Okay, I don't know many Pu'ahs, but there are many Shifras today. And what is Shifra? Rashi says, really? Her name was Yocheved. Oh, who's Yocheved? Moshe's mother. And who's Pu'ah? Really, it's Miriam. Wow, okay. So Shifra is Yocheved, Pu'ah is Miriam. And what is Shifra? Why are we nicknaming her Shifra? Says Rashi, Al Shem Shemeshaperet et Hayeled, et Havalad. She would swaddle the baby and she would make sure to shape his head and make sure that he looked beautiful in a good physical condition. She bestowed the best care. Leshaper means to beautify. She would beautify the appearance of each baby. Some babies come out and their heads, sometimes their skulls are soft and they could get a little bit maybe deformed through the coming out of the canal. So Meshaperet, Shifra would make sure to do whatever she can to beautify the baby. And Pu'ah, what does Pu'ah mean? Says Rashi, really her name was Miriam, but we call her Pu'ah, Shepo'ah umdaberet vehoga lavalad. She would coo to the baby and sing songs to him, and she would call aloud and speak and croon to the babe, just as women do who soothe a child when it's crying. Shh, shh, shh. No, don't cry. Right? Okay. I don't know what mothers do. I'm sure they can do this better than me. But Pu'ah, that's what she did, right? Miriam, she would go out and she would make sure to coo to the baby to calm the babies down. And this is an amazing lesson because if you think about what these ladies are doing, they're risking their lives to save these babies. They're risking their lives. If you asked me what should we call them, I would call them Hatzalah. That's what I would call her. She's saving lives. But no, we give her a name of Shifra, which is such a minor, insignificant aspect. Okay, you shape the baby's head. Big deal. You're trying to help the baby calm down. You're crooning to the baby. You're singing to the baby lullabies. All right, it's cute. But that's what you're calling them. They're doing something much bigger, much more important. They're saving lives. Why don't we name them after that? And one of the answers is that we learn from here how important the details are. Okay? Small things in life are really key and crucial. And so Torah over here is actually putting the emphasis not on the larger event of saving lives. Sometimes in life, we're very quick to run and do big things. Because a lot of times the big things come with a lot of reward and credit and honor and fanfare and headlines. And maybe Shifra and Pu'ah were doing saving lives and it's nice, but they're also getting a lot of Hazaku Baruchs for it. And wow, what a tzaddiket, they're saving lives. But the little things of, shaping the baby and calming the baby down, no one's really watching them do that. And that is a true portrayal of character, what we do behind closed doors when no one is watching. So you see over here something amazing. And this is what Rashi says. Their real names were Yocheved and Miriam. Now, how does Rashi know this? How does he know that they're Yocheved and Miriam? Does it say? Does it say anywhere? Says the Maharal. Because the reward, like we said, was Vaya'as lahem batim. They were given houses of Kehuna, Leviah, and Malchut. And we know there's a rule, says the Maharal. Please know this rule. Lo ba'akatuv listom ela lefaresh. Pasukim always are coming to clarify, never to confuse. Velo matzanu zot leshifra velepu'ah. We don't know about a shifra and pu'ah. We don't know anyone else that's a shifra and pu'ah that were rewarded with houses of kingship and kohanim and leviim. We don't know anyone like that. Must be, says Rashi. The Pasuk is telling us that they were rewarded with batim and the houses of kehuna and leviyah. The only ones that we know that got such things was Yocheved and Miriam. Yocheved having from her Moshe and Aaron. Miriam eventually marrying the Kalev who had kings come from him. So it has to be. It has to be. We don't know any other Leviim and Kohanim coming out of Shifra and Puah. So it's gotta be Miriam and Yocheved. Okay. But, says Maharal, another answer, interesting answer. Take a look. Medichtiv ahat veshenit. It says the name of one of them was Shifra, and the name of the second. It shouldn't have said that. Why does it say, it should have said Shema ahat Shifra v'shem ha'ahat Puah. One was one, and one was Puah. Why does it say one and two? Ela al korhach shehayu, must be one was more significant than the other. One must have been the mother, and one was the daughter. And again, we don't know any other mother and daughter except for these two. Okay, so this is so far clear. Everyone with me? Beautiful. So here we have Shifra and Puah. Torah is introducing us to Moshe's mother Yocheved, Moshe's sister. They were rewarded with Kohanim, Levim, and kings. And how do we know it's them? Maharal gives two answers. But the obvious question is going to take us to the end of today's class, and is the following question. Okay, the obvious question. Why not just write who they are? Why not just write Yocheved and Miriam? You're giving me a nickname, and okay, but just say it. Say it. Ve'im Tomar, asks the Maharal, Lama lo hizkir et shem Yocheved ve'shem Miriam beferush. Why are their names not explicit? Great question. And Maharal gives a bomb of an answer. And by the way, let's see the answer first. Ve'yir'eh, and we'll see. She'en ha'katuv maskir shem Yocheved u'Miriam ve'Aharon ad ahar ledat Moshe. Says the Maharal, no one from Moshe's family is mentioned until Moshe. Did you notice that? Not his brother, not his sister, not his mother, and not his father. You will not find any of these four names. Yocheved, Amram, Aharon, Miriam. None of them are going to appear before Moshe's birth. Moshe's birth is found in chapter 2, Pasuk 1. And by the way, even in his own birth, it doesn't say his names of his parents. The Pasuk says, Vayelech ish mebet Levi. A man from the house of Levi went, Vayikach, and took et bat Levi, and took the daughter of Levi. We know that's Amram and Yocheved. Lo ratza lehaskir shema av v'shema em shel Moshe. The Torah doesn't though write their names. Ad ledat Moshe, it keeps them anonymous. Why? Lomar lecha, says the Maharal. You know why? The names are now written anywhere until after he's born. Ki Moshe haya metukan legeula mesheshet yemei bereshit. This is a powerful Maharal. Says the Maharal, Moshe was already destined to be a redeemer from the 6 days of creation. Once he was already situated from the first 6 days of creation, his parents weren't any more of significance. If we told you his father was so-and-so before his birth, you would have thought, his father was a big rabbi, which by the way he was. Amram was the Gadol Ador, and one may have falsely concluded that his father is the reason he became Moshe. Ubishvil atzmo ushmo meyuhad lo natan lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, and he was rewarded with Moshe because he was a big guy. Kemo kolav, just like many fathers, shehu befrat siba laben, that have children that are great. You would have thought that, but that's not the case. Lachen, therefore, lo izkir shemo. Therefore, Amram, Yocheved, their names are left out. Ki etzel ledat Moshe, because when it comes to Moshe's birth, lo haya ha'av siba miyuhedet. His father was insignificant. Rak ka'asher hu keseder olam, ukmenhag shekol adam molid ben. Aval siba pratit lo yaken. He was just biologically the father. But as far as Moshe Rabbeinu himself, kol she'ar banim im lo haya ze ha'av lo ba haben le'olam. All other kids, without this father, you won't have the son. Lo ken, ze eno b'Moshe. That's not the case with Moshe. Ki af shaya amra muchan yoter leMoshe, al kol panim mukhrach Moshe lavo la'olam. Moshe's birth was not incidental. Moshe had to happen. Ufichach eno maskir shema prati kodem at Moshe. Therefore, Amram's name is not mentioned prior to the birth of Moshe. Shelo tomar ki nolad me Amram befrat. So you shouldn't say he was born to Amram. And if there was no Amram, there would be no Moshe. Sheze eno, it's not true. If it wasn't Amram, it would be someone else. But Moshe had to have been. Because Moshe, it was already established from 6 days of creation. And this goes back to what we studied yesterday. And that is that the entire purpose of creation, is what? Not just to create a world, but it was all pending until the Torah was given. For 2,448 years, the world were waiting in anticipation. What will the Jews say at Har Sinai? And it had to be that there would be a Har Sinai, because if there's no Har Sinai, if there's no Torah, there is no purpose to this. All of this means nothing without the Torah, and therefore Moshe also must have been, because Moshe is part of creation. So Moshe was already instituted and planted from the beginning of time, and that's what the Maharal says. There is no names of the parents over here, because his parents were irrelevant. Moshe is a must. Torah is a must. His parents don't matter. His birth was inevitable. Beautiful. That's a powerful Maharal. There had to have been a Moshe Rabbeinu. So this is the Gur Aryeh. And I just want to bring a couple of other times the Maharal, Rabbi Isaac Bernstein brings all of this. And he says 2 more times that we find a similar theme. But this again just goes back to why the book of Shemot, going back to yesterday's class, is called Sefer Sheni, according to the Bahag. The second book. It sounds like such a trivial name to give. The second book, Hazaku Baruch. I could also count. Give it a good name. But he says, that doesn't mean book number 2. It means book 1, part 2. This is a continuation of Genesis, because the receiving of the Torah is part and parcel of creation of the entire cosmos. We go to another Pasuk, and this is the Maharal in Shemot, chapter 19, Pasuk 2. This is when we got to Har Sinai. B'chodesh hashelishi letzed b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mizraim, the 3rd month, when the Jewish people got to Mitzrayim, leaving Mitzrayim, Ba'u Midbar Sinai. They arrived at Midbar Sinai. Anyone knows what happened there? What happened over here? Give it a couple of seconds. What happened? They get the Torah, right? Okay, very good. So we all know this. So I'm fast forwarding you to the holiday of Shavuot. It's the 3rd month, the month of Sivan. On the 7th day of Sivan, we got the Torah. 6th day, 7th day. By the way, what else happened on the 7th of Sivan? What other significant event? And it happened in our Parasha Shemot. Anyone know? That's when they put Moshe in the river. When was Moshe born? Zayin Adar. And how long did she hide him for? For 3 months. And then Lo Yachela Od Hasefino, she couldn't hide him anymore. and then she put him in the little teva and she sent him off. And that day was Zayin Sivan. Okay, so it's very interesting. The day Moshe is saved is the same day that he brings down the Torah. And by the way, we have a custom of setting up in the synagogues flowers on Zayin Sivan. And if you ask people why, they'll tell you because Har Sinai. What does flowers have to do with Har Sinai? For all we're concerned, there were no flowers on Har Sinai. As far as we're concerned, we don't know anything. Right? Because Torah is known as water, so what? So put water in the shul. What are you putting flowers for? According to some, it's specifically because that's when Moshe was through the Yam Suf. So to remember the reeds of the water, we put flowers in the synagogue. It has nothing to do with Shavuot. It has everything to do with Moshe being saved in the Teva. Very interesting. Okay, but anyways, take a look. We get to Har Sinai, and it is Pasuk 2 now that we're up to, chapter 19 in the book of Shemot. Vayis'u mirfidim. And by the way, we left Refidim. Vayava'u midbar Sinai, and we get to midbar Sinai. Vayachanu bamidbar, and we get to the desert. And the Jewish people, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Negedahar, the famous words. We situated there, we settled there as one. Ish echad lev echad. Okay, fine. Maharal asks, is it not repetitive? You told me in Pasuk 1 that we came to Har Sinai. Then you tell me in Pasuk 2 that we left Refidim and we came to Har Sinai. Why are you telling me again? I got it the first time. Right? It's like Purim, Vahibi me Achashverosh. Who? Achashverosh. Right? What's going on over here? What's the repetition? Says the Maharal. Beautiful, again, very important point. Sheka'asher habiyahi ha'ikar. When the arrival at a place was the important factor, Bahakatuv l'saper emena, and the Torah is telling that to us. Kemoshe haya bi'at midbar Sinai shesham kiblu Torah. When we got to Har Sinai, there were many places that we traveled. We left here, we got here. We left here, we got here. And many of the times, says the Maharal, the arrival was insignificant, incidental. So hakatuv maskira bi'ad bilvad. But when the arrival at a place was of importance, the Torah will mention not vayis'u vayachanu, because it just sounds like we chanced upon, but the Torah will give it its own wording. Ba'u, we got there, not because, for example, when you're going from here to certain countries, you have to take a stopover. There's no direct flights. So you stop over in Mexico City. That's not your destination. You don't care about Mexico City. Okay, no offense, Uri, love you, man. But you're looking to go to Acapulco, Oaxaca, whatever, right? So when you're going to certain places, you must stop over, but the stopover is irrelevant to you. It's insignificant. So some destinations, we just got there because it was part of the journey. However, Lo Tomar HaTorah Balahem Derech Mikre. You shouldn't think that we happened to get to Sinai and then God's like, well, take a look. We got Har Sinai. We got the Jews. I guess we'll give them the Torah. Derech Mikre, they chanced upon Sinai. Shenasum makom ploni, ubal makom ploni, natan le Torah. They happened to get here, so we give them the Torah. Kemoshi misha olech makom makom, ubal makom ploni era lo davar. It's the craziest thing. I was on my way to Canada, and on the way I got pulled over, and something happened to me. Lekach maskira bi'al levad. Therefore, it's not what happened over here with the Torah that we just chanced upon the Torah. Therefore, Torah has to give its own arrival. Ba'u midbar Sinai. Kelomar sheba'u lemakom ploni. You know what? It's not that we got there because we had to it was in between two places. No. That was its own destination. Sheba'u lemakom ploni sheyikablu sham haTorah. Wow, beautiful. So again, Maharal telling us that Torah is not something that just comes by the way. Torah is not something that, if it's convenient, we end up doing it, we'll receive it. Sometimes in our lives, okay, if we're honest with ourselves, we have situations that, I'm driving, so I guess I'll learn. There's a class playing in the car, I'll listen to it. I have an hour to kill, I may as well. Right? That's not how a Jew talks. A Jew doesn't just learn Torah because they chanced upon Torah. For the Jew, a Torah is a destination. And we make time and we cut out time from our lives to engage, to practice. If there is a minyan, I guess I'll go. No, a Jew will try to make ways to find minyanim where they're going. A Jew will make ways to make sure that they're learning. Not if it happens to be. We don't chance upon Torah. Beautiful, beautiful. And one more lesson, one more place that we see this, and that is by the continuing on this. When we got the Torah, the Pasuk says that we stood tahtit hahar. Okay? We stood at the foot of the mountain. However, if you actually translate it literally, it sounds like we stood under the mountain. And Rashi tells us, Kafa alehem har kegigit. Our Rabbi tells in Masechet Shabbat, you know what it means that we stood tahtit hahar? We were in a way under the mountain. This is Pasuk 17, chapter 19. That Moshe took the Jews out, vayityatevu betachtit hahar, and we stood under the mountain. Again, we translate it loosely that they stood at the foot of the mountain. But if you read it word for word, they stood under the mountain. And therefore our rabbis tell us, in a way, God raised the Torah over our heads. And he said, if you accept it, good. And if not, you die here. And again, Maharal is telling us, our rabbis are telling us, what an important lesson. Later generations may have thought that we accepted the Torah because we were in the right frame of mind and we were indebted to God for taking us out of Egypt. And there may be a Jew one day that will come along and say that Torah is optional, and for me, I'd rather not. My ancestors, good for them, it's your choice. My father wanted to be a doctor, good for him. I want to be an accountant, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an athlete. My father, charted his path and I create my own. So my ancestors accepted the Torah, but good for them. And therefore, kafa alehem har kigigit. God had to force them. Torah is not optional. Even though we wanted to accept it, God had to force us anyways, not for them, but for the Jews later on. Torah is a must. Without it, there is no life. Torah is not something that's incidental or optional or that you chance upon. Moshe's name is a must. The Torah is a must. The Kabbalat HaTorah, we arrived at Sinai as a must. All of these things in our lives will be very wise if we are able to incorporate the Torah and realize that it's a Etz Chaim Hi, that it is a tree of life. If someone's drowning, the only way to survive is to grab onto that tree and float to safety. The Torah is not something that's nice. Torah is not, a brain stimulator. The Torah is life. So these are all answering the original question of why are Moshe's parents not listed by name? Okay, very interesting. I'd like to though share with you for today, and then we'll end. One more answer of why Moshe's parents are not listed by name in our parasha. Again, going back to the Pasuk. Vayelech ish mibat Levi, vayikach bat Levi. Okay, a man from the house of Levi goes and he marries a woman, and she gives birth, and they have a baby, and only later on do we know that it's Amram Yocheved, but technically in his birth they're not listed by name. So we just saw the Maharal who gives his own answer, but there is another answer. And to understand this answer, let us read a little bit in chapter 2. After, who finds Moshe? Who finds Moshe? The Pasuk says, Pasuk 5, chapter 2, Vatered bat Paro, the daughter of Paro. Look how God has a sense of humor. Okay? Paro is decreeing to kill all the babies, and who brings the baby into the house? His own daughter, right? Vatered bat Paro, she goes down to bathe. And her maidens walking along the Nile. She sees the teva. She sends her amata. She sends her maid. Vatikacheha, and she fetches the teva. She fetches the basket. She opens it up. She sees a child, and all of a sudden, who's watching all of this? Miriam, Moshe's sister. Okay, she was also not even big at the time. She was 6 years old. Vatomer achoto. So the girl says to Bat Paro, Ha'elech v'karati lach isha mineket min ha'ivriot. Should I go get you a Jewish Hebrew nurse to suckle the child for you? And she says, sure. Now the question is, why does Miriam offer this? Why would Bat Paro agree to this? Says Rashi, Shehziratu al misriyot harbe linok velo yanak. Because she was trying to nurse this child from many non-Jewish women. But Moshe wouldn't nurse. Why not? Why wouldn't Moshe nurse? Because he was destined to speak to God. And the mouth that speaks to God cannot be the same mouth to drink from non-Jewish milk. Beautiful. Beautiful. I want to study with you today one halacha in Yoreh De'ah. Okay, open up if you have a Shulchan Aruch. Yoreh De'ah, Siman, chapter 81, halacha number 7, halacha Zayin. Okay, discussing over here milk. And now the halacha goes into, what about human milk? Milk from a lady. Is this permissible? Says the Shulchan Aruch, halav isha mutar. Yes, it's kosher. Okay, technically if somebody needs to drink ladies' milk, it's allowed. Okay. And the Rama now comes and has what to say. The Rama adds, okay, the halacha over here is lengthy, but we're skipping to the Rama, Rav Moshe Isserlis, and he adds the following. What about non-Jewish ladies' milk? Does it matter? Is there kosher and not kosher by people? We know that there are non-kosher animals, but are there non-kosher people? Okay? I'm not talking about cannibalism, but let's say I want to have milk, technically from a non-Jewish lady. Is that allowed? Milk from a lady, Shulchan Aruch writes, is allowed. But what about, is it any lady? Could I drink the milk of a non-Jewish lady? So says the Rama, take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, he writes, Halav mitzrit, okay, Egyptian milk, ke halav Israelit, it's like Jewish milk. It's kosher. Okay? Umikol makom, however, lo yaniku tinok min hamitzrit, better not to give a baby to drink from Egyptian milk. So technically, let's say there's a lady that, God forbid, is not able to breastfeed her child, to nurse her child. So today we have alternatives. Today we have Similac, formula. But back then, they didn't always have formula, so they would have to hire a nurse. Are you allowed to hire a non-Jewish nurse? So the Rama says, technically, yes. However, im efshar be'Yisraelit, if you have a Jewish one, better not to. Why? Why? Says the Rama, de halav ovedet kochavim, because the milk of a non-Jewish lady, metamtem halev, can contaminate the heart of the baby, umolid lo tevara, and it can instill into this baby negative qualities. Wow! So Rama says, technically it's kosher, it's not a sin, but it's spiritual things going on if you give your baby to drink from non-Jewish milk. Now, what is the source of the words of the Rama, everybody? Where does he get this from? So says the Gaon Mevilna, quote, he says, okay, take a look at the Gaon Mevilna, who's a commentary, and he says the following. Aval Rashba katav, the Rashba says, and this is the source, the mimidat chasidut, if you can, it's better, who, not to give him from the Egyptian. Why? Lefi shehalav megadel teva kayotze bo, because the milk you are what you eat. Okay, this is something that we studied when we learned the laws of kosher. We'll get into it again soon. But you are what you eat, and if you drink the milk of a non-Jewish lady, if she is someone who's not refined, you have not kosher, not holy things going on. And he quotes now the Midrash Pirashat Shemot, where Miriam says, "V'karati lach isha mineket." Should I get for you a Jewish nurse? V'chi asur haya leMoshe linok mehalav ovedet kochavim. Would Moshe not have been allowed to nurse from Egyptian women? I thought it's kosher, it's allowed. However, Moshe didn't want to, because peh she'atid ledaber, if this mouth is going to communicate with God, then he cannot drink from this tameh milk. And therefore, halachically, non-Jewish women's milk is allowed. but for Moshe Rabbeinu it's not allowed. And that is the source of the Ramah. And the Ramah tells us as well, therefore stay away for your own children from non-Jewish milk. And asked Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, what in the world is the connection over here? You want to learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, who is going to talk to God, and that's why his mouth, pe el pe adaber bo, mouth to mouth, God speaks to him. Moshe, I understand, can't drink the milk from a non-Jewish lady because he's on a high level. Who here today is going to talk to God? How do you make a halakha for us? And learn it from Moshe, who was the highest prophet. Says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, because we must all raise our children as if they are going to be the next Moshe Rabbeinu. Every single one of us must give our children the best shots in life to succeed. We have to give them the best Torah education. We can never accept mediocrity for our children. And who knows? Your child one day may be Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore when he's young, keep him away from milk, because you never know. One day your son, your daughter may be as great as Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore from now, you want to make sure that they have every chance of succeeding, give them the best education. There was a lady in India, a doctor from America, and she was a big doctor. She moved to India and she had one of the most state-of-the-art technology over there. And when it was time for her to give birth, she made sure to come to America to give birth. And they asked her why. We have very top hospitals here in India. And you know what she responded? She responded, I want to give my child a chance to one day be the president of the United States. And if he's born here in India, he cannot do that. This is what the Ramah is saying. That before your child's even born, we're trying to think how we could give them the best chances to succeed in life, physically, politically, and spiritually. And therefore, every child, make sure you're raising your kids. Unfortunately in life, we sell ourselves short. We sell our children short. We give them an okay Torah education. When it comes to secular Torah, to secular knowledge, we give them the best of the best. We give them the best schools. We get them the best teachers. We're teaching them the best art and culture and history. And unfortunately, sometimes when it comes to Torah, parents are okay with a mediocre education for their children. Why? Says the Ramah, make sure you're giving your child the best chance to succeed in life. What do you mean? What are the chances you'll be great like Moshe? You don't know. There's a chance. Maybe. We wanna raise them to be the best possible. Give them kosher milk. There's a chance. You never know. He could be like Moshe Rabbeinu one day. So this is an amazing lesson, and I think we could go back and now answer our other question. Why are Moshe's parents' names not listed? And the answer is because you don't need to be Amram and Yocheved to have a Moshe. You, me, all of us right here on this chat can have a Moshe. If we read their names, we would say, oh, so they can have a Moshe. But we, who are we? Are we Gadol Ador? Are we the biggest in the generation? We're small people. We're insignificant Jews. We're sitting in the back of the shul. We're, regular folk. No, because even Moshe's parents, we don't know who they are. We know who they are, but the Torah leaves it out because everybody can have a Moshe. Everybody can be a Moshe. So I think these are really worthwhile lessons, amazing lessons from the beginning of the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu. How number one, the Torah is not something that's nice or cute. Torah is vital. Torah is a must. The birth of Moshe is a must. The Kabbalat Torah is a must. Arriving at Sinai is a must. And number two, every one of us has the potential to be like Moshe Rabbeinu, to always give our children the best chances to succeed in life. Okay, we'll stop over here. See you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.